All right, friends, so today we're going to talk about 8 signs that you might need to declutter. I want you to know that these 8 signs are all things that I have personally gone through myself, and they've really showed me when I get overly stressed about things, or that it's not my fault that I'm feeling this way, but it is the fault that I have just too much going on in my house, and that I really need to assess the things that I'm bringing in and maybe send some more things out. And one of the biggest signs for me that I need to declutter, and that is I just don't want to come home. So if you've ever gone to work or headed out and done something all day, and then it's time to go home and you get this gut-wrenching feeling of I don't really want to go home, or let's go find something else to do outside the house. Literally for me, anything at that point to not go home. I would make up every excuse in the book, and you can ask my husband Jordan. I used to be like, let's go to Barnes & Noble, or let's go to another store, and he'd get so frustrated, but I just really didn't want to go home because I just felt like when I was at home, I didn't feel cozy. I didn't feel comfortable being at home, so I'd rather just stay out and not have to think about it. That's a big red flag. If you're feeling like that, then you really need to assess, why is your home not your safe place? So when I really started thinking about this more and more over this past week, when I knew I wanted to do this video, I was really thinking about that though I didn't realize not wanting to go home was a sign that I didn't feel comfortable in my home. I just thought like I'm a extroverted person, which I'm not even really all that extroverted, but I'm an extroverted person. I just like to be out. I like to go have fun. There's nothing to do at home. I thought that was the reason why. And when I really became more minimalist and I started doing really big declutters, and I started really thinking about how I wanted my home to look and feel, I realized that the only reason I didn't want to be at home was because it was a mess. And I knew I had that Rolodex of chores and things that I haven't been doing in my brain. And I knew if I was at home, then I would feel guilty for not doing them. So if that is you, then that's definitely a sign to declutter. So let's head on to number 2. But if you haven't subscribed yet and you like learning about minimalism and decluttering, living a simpler life, then remember to hit that subscribe button, and let's go to number 2. I don't know if you guys do this, but I literally talk to myself all the time. And so one of the things that I've realized recently is that a lot of times when I'm out, I also talk to myself out loud, which I think comes from my mother. I stopped telling myself the constant stories about why I needed something just in case, or what if this disaster happened. There are so many stories that we tell ourselves constantly about why we need to keep something. And it can be as little as a scrap of paper that you might need at some point, to as big as that living room chair. What if you need it when people come over? So there are so many stories that I have told myself over and over again, and it was a big reason why I had such a hard time decluttering in the beginning, was all of these stories I would tell myself. So one of them was our wine glasses. We used to have a ton of wine glasses. We used to have tons of shot glasses. We just had it all. I used to even have like a little bar that I set up, even though we really don't drink very often. My husband like never drinks, and I only drink on occasion. But anyway, it was like, what if we had this big party and we don't have, everyone has their own wine glass? Or, you know, what if I don't have a shot glass for everyone if they want to take shots? I mean, what if? Like, we don't even do that. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I was telling myself all of these stories. So here's a part of that success story. When I stopped telling myself all these stories, I decided that I only wanted 3 wine glasses. I have one that is plastic and pretty cheap, but my daughter really enjoys it because she likes to be fancy sometimes. And then I have 2 nice wine glasses that have survived the years that my grandma gave me. And so they're beautiful and they're special. So we have 3. So anyway, one day my husband, I think he had told me that he was thinking about inviting some coworkers over, but I didn't have a firm yes, and I didn't know how many people were coming. And so anyway, they come over after work one day, and it's a bunch of them. It's probably like 10 to 12 people. And we had those 3 wine glasses. And so what we did is, I mean, if you wanted a cup, you just got like a mug, or we have our 4 glasses, and people just kind of shared. Well, one of the coworkers came up to me and she was like, where's your shot glasses? Like, I think she wanted to make a mixed drink or something. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't have one. I don't have a shot glass. And she's like, what? How do you not have that? And I was like, well, like, we don't flu shots, and I just didn't really want to have one. Like, I just don't need it. And the great thing about that conversation was that she was not judgmental of me at all and our lifestyle. She was just curious. And I think that is one of the big points, that we keep so many things because we're afraid people are going to judge us, and we're afraid people are going to say things and think a certain way. But 9 times out of 10, I mean, especially these are people that like us, that wanted to come over and hang out with us. Like, they're not judgmental, they're curious.
It said, be curious, not judgmental.
And I never felt like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough stuff to have this surprise party that we're having. And so many of us live so many different lifestyles. And so she was just curious about it, and that was totally fine. I got to share with her like why we don't need it and blah, blah, and then we moved on. We had a great time. But I mean, we didn't have enough seats. So some of them were sitting on the floor, older people were sitting on the couch, or if you had a dress on, you sat on a chair, and we had enough, and we had so much fun. And I just felt like, wow, we're so flexible now. Like, my husband and I, we just like make it work. We brought in some of our beach chairs and sat them in the living room as well, and people did not care at all. At least they didn't tell us. So I'm just like, they didn't care at all. They just wanted to be there and enjoy the company of all of us that were there. So if you are telling yourself tons of stories about what people will think of you if you don't have something, or what if some big disaster happens, it's often just that. It's just a story, and it's most likely never going to come true. And so, keep the things that you're really enjoying, and keep the things that are useful, but don't keep something in case something is going to happen, because most likely it won't. And if it does, like in my story, then you will make do and you'll figure it out, because your brain has become more flexible to be able to think that many things have many different uses. Okay, so number 3 is one of my biggest pet peeves, and that is when you can't find things. If you are constantly in your house and you cannot find the simplest things, that is a huge sign that you need to declutter. And I'll tell you a very recent story. The great thing about my house is that I have this key chain thing near my door, and I hang my keys there every time, and so I always know where they are. So that's great. But the other day, I am super jet lagged. We just got back from Italy, and I'm actually still kind of feeling kind of weird. I went to bed at 7 last night and woke up at 4. So it's slowly getting a little bit better, but I was in a fog, and I had to open our side door, which my husband had double locked when we left. And so I had to use my keys. So I went upstairs to go get my keys. I unlocked the door, and then because of my brain fog, I didn't take the keys back out of the door. Instead, I left them in the door, and I went about the rest of my day. Well, yesterday there was a huge storm on the East Coast, and I live in Virginia, and so my daughter actually got out of school 2 hours early, and my husband's calling me, you need to come pick her up, and I'm like panicked, and I'm searching for my keys, and I'm like, how are the keys not in the place where they always are? And I had that like throwback image of myself constantly looking for things when I hadn't decluttered yet. I was always looking for something. It was just the worst. So anyway, I can't find my keys. I'm searching everywhere, flipping the cushions over, looking for these keys. And finally, it dawned on me that I had opened the door. And you know what? But lo and behold, there they were in the door. But it really reminded me, and that's why I have this on this, and that's why I have it on this list, is that if you are living in a home where you are constantly losing things, or your children are constantly looking for that one toy that they keep losing, that's a sign to declutter. That's a sign that you have too much, and that you also probably need to find better homes for your things. So not that we don't ever lose anything anymore, we do on occasion, but I will say it is much, much less often. And because we have such a low inventory, it's easy to find a home for it that makes sense for us. All right, friends, so if any of these are resonating with you, which if you're anything like me, they definitely will be, then please put a heart emoji down below and let me know that we're all in this together. So number 4 is very personal, and I would love to know if you also feel like this, but I knew I needed to declutter when I could never, ever find a cleaning routine that worked for me. So I would always go on Pinterest and I would search up all these people's, how to clean your house in a week, and every day has a certain thing you do. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with those. I think they are helpful. But when you have a huge inventory of things, there is no cleaning schedule that is going to get you there. So what I found is like one day I would vacuum. Well, I needed to vacuum every day. So it's like doing that one day didn't actually make me feel any better. By the next day, I had dog hair everywhere. And I just felt like there were so many pieces of furniture, so many little pieces on the ground all the time, all the rugs that I had, that I could never truly clean my house to the point where I felt comfortable, where I didn't just feel like I was a failure every day. Like my house always looked a wreck. So, if you're afraid to have people over, or you don't feel like you can ever sit down and relax, it's a big sign that you need to declutter. If you're finding that you can't just create a simple cleaning routine, like we have a Roomba downstairs that she goes every day, but I will vacuum little bits of our house every day. And I will do the windows maybe like once a month. I don't need a routine anymore. I don't need a schedule anymore that tells me what to do on every day, but that's only because I've gotten my inventory so low that now it's just easy for me to see where and what needs to be cleaned. Okay, so number 5 and number 6 are two of the biggest things that I personally recognized once I started decluttering and living a more minimalist life that really showed me that I need to declutter and take charge of my own life. So number 5 is that you feel like you constantly need to keep buying things, but then you get home and you realize that you don't even want to take them out of the bag and you have nowhere to put them. So that's a big sign that you need to do a declutter, and you probably need to do some assessments of your overspending, which if you haven't been to my website yet, it's minimalist.com, and I have a free week no spend, and I have a no spend month that you can also get on my website. So if you're interested, I'm gonna link that below. But if you are getting home and you do not have the energy to put those things away because either where you wanted to put it, it is overcrowded, or you hadn't even thought about where you wanted to put it, and you just bought it and you got it and you brought it home, and now you have that bag and you're like, I'm gonna throw it in the corner. That's a big sign that you need to declutter your house. So what I found is that when you are buying at a higher rate than your home can handle, it's very easy and you will very quickly overstuff your house and feel very uncomfortable. That is exactly why people, luckily we don't have a garage, but we do have a shed, but that is exactly why people can't park their cars in their garage. It's exactly why attics are stuffed to the hilt. It's because we are going out, we are buying things without knowing exactly where we want to put them and knowing what we have in that inventory. So I'll give you an example. Like, we have 2 pairs of scissors that are like adult scissors. My daughter has 1 pair of her own little kid scissors, but we have 2 adult pairs. One is downstairs near my husband's desk where we do like our printing and all that kind of stuff. And then the other is under the sink. I don't need another pair of scissors because I know where those 2 are, but I used to not. Like, they would always be floating around somewhere, and you'd have to do that like 20-minute search for the scissors and the tape and everything when you're looking for them. But now that I know where they are and I know how many I have, I know that if I go into any store, there's no reason that I need to buy another pair of scissors because I know exactly where they are and I know what they look like in my head. It immediately pops up. I think that's a big key thing that will help you. When you know those really important things in your house that you use a lot and you can actually picture them in your brain, you feel less inclined and you feel the less of a need to buy something else. Like, I know how many forks I have. You don't need to know that. That's not super important. But I know that I don't need to get more because I can picture them in the drawer right now and I know that I have enough. Same thing with cups and plates and all those kind of things. Like, you get tempted when you go to the store and you're like, oh my goodness, I really would like some black silverware. I think they look really cool. But do I need them? No, because I can picture exactly how many I have and I know I have enough. So when you are overbuying constantly and too much inventory is coming in, when you have that bag in your hand and then you don't feel like putting them away because it's too much of a hassle to find where they should go, it's a big sign that you have too high an inventory and you need to do a declutter. All right, friends, hang in there. We only got a couple more. So that leads me to number 6. And remember, if you are still enjoying this, to hit that subscribe button and join the Minimalist team here on Minimalist. But number 6 is that you still have things with tags on them. And I was so personally guilty of this. And so please don't feel bad if this is you, because I feel like a lot of us have been through this ourselves. But so my husband and I used to make fun of this house we would drive by a lot, because it was this McMansion. I mean, just a massive house. And they had newer house, I guess, but not brand new. And the people had been living there for about a year when we started making fun of it, because they never took the tags off the windows. And so all the windows in their house, you could tell from the street, had all of like those window tags that you got when you got, new windows. How do you live in like a gorgeous, huge house and you have not taken off all the tags off the windows? Like, one, haven't you noticed that when you drive by your house? And I'm just like, it really got me thinking, because personally, I didn't do that with windows, but lots of clothes. Like, I would do the same thing with clothes or shoes. I would buy and I'd have this image of me wearing them and how great I was going to look and blah, blah, blah. But then I'd got them home and I would never wear them, or I might wear them one time, but like they still had the tags on them hanging in my closet. And how often we tell ourselves these stories of how awesome we're gonna look and how we're gonna go to this party maybe one day and we're gonna want this outfit, and how often that just doesn't come true and it's not reality. So if you're looking around your house and you have several things that have tags on them, what I'm gonna challenge you to do now is to just get rid of those things. Because one, you already made the purchase. So if you've had it for so long, you can't return it, then it's time to either sell it quickly. My philosophy is only ever give it 2 weeks to try and sell it, because it's a pain. Sell it, or just get rid of it. Forgive yourself for overspending in that area, and then remember that you're not going to do it again. You're going to grow, you're going to learn from this experience. But if you've had it in your house for a little while, couple months, couple weeks even, if you thought you were going to use it and love it and then you didn't, it's time to declutter it and let it go. All right, so this is one that I thought about, and you might not have heard this one before, but for me, it was a big sign that I needed to declutter. And that is, you constantly feel the need to move around your furniture or move around pictures or create new picture walls. You just never feel settled, like this room is done. And you constantly feel like you need to be changing things, buying things, moving things around. That's a big sign that you need to declutter. So I could personally relate with this, because I was definitely guilty of moving furniture constantly. Couch upstairs, couch downstairs, moving the couch, swapping them, getting a new sofa, getting a new chair, trying the chairs in different rooms, getting a new rug, not liking that rug, moving it to a different room and shifting it around. Oh my gosh, there were, what have I been married to my husband for 10 years now? There were so many years that he just dealt with me, begging him to help me move all this stuff. And he's a saint, so he did it all and helped me. But it was just a constant shifting of things. I never felt like the room looked quite done. I always had to add that one extra piece. And so what I have found is that when I finally stepped back and I really started to declutter a lot of things, I stopped doing the big picture walls in my house, because I realized that while I think they're super cute and I have nothing personally against them, it was stressful for me, because I always felt like one of the pictures looked a little crooked, and I always felt like I wasn't dusting them enough, and there were so many pictures, and how do I keep up with this? And they were always a little bit weird, and I don't know, I could never find the right picture frames that went together. It was a mess. So I'm probably a little bit OCD about weird things like that, but I was constantly changing them all the time and trying to create this perfect picture wall of all the pictures that I had. So I will put a picture in of what my picture walls used to look like if I can find one, but it was just ridiculous. I used to have this huge cow picture that I'd put in the middle. Anyway, let's just say I would constantly change things, put holes in our walls, constantly tried new things, and I never felt quite satisfied. It's like the more you get, the less satisfied you feel. Doesn't matter whether someone else thinks that it looks, just right in the home magazine. It matters what you think and how cozy and comfortable and at ease you feel in the space. I used to hate blank walls, and now that I've found that I have taken away so many things and there are so many blank walls in my house, that I feel actually a lot more calm. I know we're not all like this, and that's okay, but for me personally, and if you are struggling with feeling very comfortable in your house, you might want to have some blank spaces. All right, friends, so if you're still here, number 8 is actually what I think is the most important thing that you can notice about yourself that will tell you need to declutter, and that is if you're having a hard time regulating your emotions or you're having a hard time focusing in your house. So personally, I am somebody who is very easily overwhelmed. I have a tendency to kind of get a little OCD about stuff, and I have a hard time regulating my emotions when there's too much clutter. And while I never really put those 2 and 2 things together about clutter and my emotions and regulating and focusing, it is something that really changed when I became more minimalist and really started to declutter a lot. Is I realized that my emotions and being able to regulate my anxiety and being able to focus and get things done, tasks done, changed dramatically when I decluttered my house and lived much more simply. And actually, because I knew this, but I didn't ever like read up on it, I went through yesterday and I started to look at some studies about it because I was just interested. I was like, why are those 2 things linked? So what I found is that in a 2009 study, they showed that chronically cluttered homes can lead to a constant low-grade fight or flight response. So when you have clutter around your house, it actually can lead you to feel like you are constantly in a state of fight or flight. How crazy is that? So all those times where I felt like I couldn't really regulate my emotions and I was trying to figure out why I'm kind of feeling like I'm going crazy and getting, super angry or upset. There are so many things that happened because I was in a constant state of clutter. I was in a constant state of feeling overwhelmed by the areas and the home that I was living in. And there's actually research-based studies that prove that that is true. Now, I'm sure that's not the same for everybody, but it definitely associated with how my feelings felt when I came home, and probably also linked with why I never wanted to come home, why I always wanted to be out, because I felt more regulated, more at ease when I was out as opposed to in my own home. So what I found also is that in 2016, they did a study in the US that found that having a lot of clutter, so they studied people in a room and they had a lot of clutter around them, and then they put on a movie and had them watch the people's emotions on their face. And people that were in the very cluttered room actually had a harder time interpreting facial expressions. And so you're not going crazy if you are maybe not reading your spouse or your partner or your children. Maybe it's just that there's too much clutter going on around you and it's overwhelming your senses. And so you're not correctly identifying these emotions. And I've personally found that to be true. When I live with less clutter, I have more of a bandwidth to be able to deal with large emotions. Now, I'm far from perfect, but I have found that when my house is more cluttered, I automatically feel like I'm in a higher state of anxiety than if my house is less cluttered and something happens, I can regulate it better. What I also found was very interesting was that they also did a study about sleep, and that when you sleep in a cluttered room, you actually have a harder time going to sleep, and people had a harder time staying asleep and having that deep REM sleep that we all need. And I mean, there are so many studies about sleep. So if you're not getting good sleep, everything else goes out the window. You're going to have high anxiety. You're going to have a hard time reading people's emotions. You're going to feel dysregulated and out of control. And it's because you're supposed to have a certain amount of sleep. And I can definitely say that having jet lag these past 2 days and waking up at all weird hours of the night has definitely not helped. So not getting the right sleep at the right times is not super helpful for you. And so if any of these resonate with you, that is definitely a sign to declutter your space and have some blank walls and live with a little bit less so that you have less stress. If you've enjoyed learning about decluttering, then remember to please hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, friends.